Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, continuing our deep dive into this Texas A&M Aggies program heading into the 2024 season. Dill, we took a look at the offensive line, took a look at the defensive line. Now we're taking a look at the offensive skill, and this is a unit. Conor Weigman, the running backs, the wide receivers. I think a lot of people on Twitter just assume this unit's going to take a step back because they see Evan Stewart transfer from the program. This is a unit that I'm extremely excited about. And you talk about the offensive line potentially taking that step in 2024. This Texas A&M offense, I think, going to catch a lot of people by surprise. And we're at the point of the offseason where you've got to start just kind of sticking your flag in the ground for certain players. And I'm going to do that for Conor Weigman. I go back and watch that film against the Miami Hurricanes where the offensive line did absolutely zero to help him out. And what you saw was phenomenal arm talent, which we knew he had, but the gamesmanship and how much of a gamer he was in kind of creating plays for that offense. I think with more offensive line help going into year 3 in Coach Colin Klein's offense, and I think you might see a massive step from Conor Weigman. Extremely excited to get into this unit. We're going to give you guys our projections for leading rushers, leading receivers. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. And of course, just want to say thank you to you guys. There has been just a tremendous amount of support from the Texas A&M fans the last couple of weeks as we've broken down all of the action Mike Elko has done in the transfer portal. Cannot thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, Dill, I'm going to give you the T-box here. This Texas A&M offensive skill heading into 2024, how we feel.
And I think you said it best. The way Conor Weigman played behind an offensive line that was just doing so little for these quarterbacks, just the composure, the command of the offense. And it was such a stark contrast, I thought, from Weigman to Max Johnson. Max Johnson's played a lot of football, relatively decent player. But again, in that offense with the chaos that was kind of going on around him caused by that offensive line, I just think you noticed how much different it looked with Weigman and how much more comfortable, how much more calm he was, and how much more like he didn't make a ton of mistakes, even though there were a lot of opportunities to do it. And that's what you're kind of looking for. I think he is the guy. I think it's huge that he stayed because I felt like he was kind of one of those guys that would it frankly be up in the air when the new coaching staff came. So the fact that he's back and with an offensive coordinator that's done a really good job with a lot less at a school like Kansas State, I think you're really interested to see what this team can be, especially if the offensive line just plays a little bit better.
If it just takes a step, and you take a look at Conor Weigman, you talk about not making mistakes, 8 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions before he goes down with injury. Dill completed 69% of his balls. And those 2 interceptions, one was, I watched the film, both interceptions came against the Miami Hurricanes. One was a receiver going down out of a break. And then the second was you're down 2 scores late in the fourth quarter, just trying to do a little too much. I mean, you saw him consistently make good decisions, high-level throws in the face of just a tremendous amount of pressure. I mean, that Texas A&M offensive line didn't pick up a single blitz that whole game. Conor Weigman extending time. He's a phenomenal athlete, which is another thing. I'm kind of excited to see what Coach Colin Klein uses with Conor Weigman. But at the end of the day, you have a quarterback that I think has both traits that you want. Right, tremendous arm talent. We knew he put that on full display early in that 2023 season, can make every throw that you want him to make in the offense, which I think at times gets taken for granted. But more importantly, between the ears, I think he has it. So he's checking both boxes that I want. And you talk about a quarterback that is not getting a ton of preseason buzz, just quite frankly, you didn't see a ton of them the first 2 years. And I think Conor Weigman is a guy that's an all-SEC guy. Wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about him being one of the better quarterbacks in that conference during this 2024 year. But what I want to talk about is kind of how he fits in this Colin Klein offense. When you take a look at what Coach Klein wants to do at Kansas State, he wants to get the football out on time into his playmakers in space. Right, Texas A&M taking sacks, taking negative plays was a massive problem for this unit in 2023. Will Howard at Kansas State was only sacked 3% of his dropbacks. That was 16th best in the country. And yes, Will Howard was a veteran quarterback that knew how to get the football out quick. But I think also the schematics of that offense kind of just limited those big negative plays. You're getting the ball out quick to your running backs, into the flat, and kind of letting the quarterback be a facilitator of the offense. That's probably what I'm most excited about. And Dill, you take a look at this wide receiver position. Again, I think a unit that I know you're extremely high on. I think a lot of people just assume is going to take a massive step back because you lose a guy like Evan Stewart. I mean, they did a nice job in the portal, and they have some playmakers coming back that I think are really exciting for Texas A&M fans.
And honestly, my biggest concern probably heading in for this A&M team was how are they going to replace Aeneas Smith? Because just it felt like for the last couple of years, he was kind of the guy, super dependable, felt like he just, when you needed a play, he was the one who made it, did a good job after the catch, made big plays for them. And I think that was the question when he was going to leave. It was who's going to be a next up. And frankly, for me, Jahdae Walker, the way he played down the stretch and just how comfortable he was making plays, worked the sideline well, worked across the middle well, picked up yards after the catch really well, whether it was on screens, whether it was on stuff over the middle. I was really encouraged by what you saw from him. Thought he played great against Ole Miss, great in that bowl game. He's kind of the guy I'm looking for, frankly, to see if he can be what Aeneas Smith was and just be that safety blanket and make those plays when they need him. Because that, again, maybe not the most explosive wide receiver on this football team, but really savvy, really good along the outside.
I'm going to push back on that. I'm going to push back. I think it's Moose Muhammad that's going to be kind of replacing Smith. I think Walker's a guy that can more attack that deeper third and have that ball skill and kind of the circus catches that Evan Stewart gave you at times. And I'm not saying that Walker's going to be Evan Stewart in this offense. That being said, you're asking me who replaces Smith in that guy who can work after the catch, kind of win short and intermediate route trees. I'm going Moose Muhammad there. But Jahdae Walker, when you talk about just raw traits and what he can do with that football in the air and how he can control his body, I think he's a guy. I think Noah Thomas is another guy that I think you kind of expressed concern. Actually, I'm a backtrack. Moose Muhammad, but I'd also throw in Detroit transfer Jabari Barber to kind of replace some of that slot type of work. Dill, I think you had the question of, all right, who's going to be the wide receiver to really attack that deeper third? And I guess I'll open it up for you. Who's going to be maybe replacing kind of what Evan Stewart was able to do for Texas A&M the last 2 years?
I mean, my first instinct is Cyrus Allen, just because the way I thought he played at Louisiana Tech, where, again, I don't know if he's the fastest wide receiver in the world, but so comfortable catching the ball down the field, really good tracking it, and really good just creating the separation. Again, it's not all about being a track guy. It's like if you can separate vertically, there's a skill to that, and he really did a good job with that. And frankly, I'm kind of wondering what Mike Elko has that maybe we don't know about, because you look at that bowl game, I know he didn't really catch any, I think he caught 2 passes, so he didn't have a huge game, but they were looking to hit him deep. I think a lot of that fell on offensive line play not being great and obviously with the quarterback situation in that game. But I'm very curious to know what he has, because it looked like they wanted to take shots to him. They didn't get to it. But I'm interested to know if he's got something a little like secret that we don't really know about.
I think he probably does. And again, he was a true freshman last year. I think there's a lot of meat left on the bone for a guy like Mike Elko. I think you could say the very same thing for Noah Thomas. And then at the end of the day, you have 6-7 wide receivers that you're really excited about heading into 2024. Which one of those wide receivers kind of step up and be those playmakers for this offense?
Probably Noah Thomas is an interesting one, because you saw moments where he's really good in those contested catches.
Yes.
You didn't really see him get down the field vertically and like win over the top a whole lot. But again, when the ball was in the air, he's dangerous, and there's something to that, whether you can work him on back shoulder routes, some of those things that, again, are plays. If you have the guys to do it, they're very hard to defend. And there were things he did last year that I thought he really did a good job with.
One thing you can't teach is that 6'6" frame. You can't teach the 6'6" frame, and that's what Noah Thomas brings to the table. Now, one other thing I would note here in terms of pass catchers, we just talked about 6 or 7 wide receivers. Ben Sinnott at Kansas State was an integral part of that pass catching, that passing attack at the tight end position. Donovan Green coming back from injury. I mean, you're going to see a lot of 11 and 12 personnel in this offense. You're going to want to see some tight ends emerge. And Donovan Green, a guy that we were extremely excited about going into 2023, obviously the really unfortunate injury in fall camp. He's probably a guy that you're talking about maybe being maybe not a ton of chatter about heading into 2024, but a guy that could play a massive role in this passing attack. Donovan Green. Dill, I'll ask you this. Would love to hear from the listeners as well. Leading receiver for this Texas A&M team heading into 2024. What's your prediction?
I mean, I think if you just listen to me, you have to know it's Jade Walker. I think Jade Walker's so good. He just,
Yeah.
again, he felt like once he started to get his opportunities with the injuries and some of the stuff that happened late, he really started to come on. I just think he's really dangerous in those like high percentage kind of situations. Good with the ball in his hands after screens, good work in the middle, and good in those short to intermediate routes on the boundary. He just really controls himself well. Seems like he has good instincts for that position. And I don't know. It felt like he started to become the guy, like the go-to guy in those final couple of games. And I think that's how you become the leading receiver in my mind.
I'm going to go with Moose Muhammad. And I think it goes exactly with kind of what I talked about. Who's replacing Smith in this offense? I think it's going to be Moose Muhammad. I think he's going to have a lot of targets. I think he's going to have a lot of opportunity to operate with the ball in his hands. But I think what's cool about this Texas A&M offense is Moose Muhammad's a good one. Johnny Walker's a good one. I think Micah Tees would be a good one, and Jabari Barber. Like, I think you got 4 or 5 guys that, really could emerge as this wide receiver one.
And that'll be the interesting thing is who kind of emerges as that true number one. And I'm not saying like Jade Walker won't, but again, who's going to replace kind of what Evan Stewart did? Evan Stewart just did everything. He is really good getting the ball vertically downfield, really good running routes. I mean, he was like that true number one guy. I am wondering who's going to be that guy if they have it, and I don't even know if you need to have it at this point in college.
No, I think you're going to see a much more balanced wide receiver room. Like, I think there are a lot of guys that can hurt opposing defenses. Moving to the running back room, I think you got a loaded running back room. I mean, you return Le'Veon Moss, Amari Daniels, Ruben Owens, those 3 running backs, phenomenal. You add EJ Smith, who I don't know how much opportunity EJ Smith's going to get because this is a loaded running back room. You go back to early 2022, EJ Smith looked like one of the best running backs in Pac-12. So I'll just put that there. Dill, what I'm most excited for with this running back room is, one, the depth. You're keeping these guys fresh throughout the season, but most importantly, Ruben Owens. I mean, if this running back room is truly special in 2024, I think it's just because Ruben Owens going into year 2 emerges as one of the best running backs in the SEC and in the country.
And there is like, again, I like Amari Daniels. I like Le'Veon Moss. Both really have solid vision. They do their thing and they get a lot of yards. But I think if this rushing attack is going to get like really explosive and hit bigger plays, I think it's going to be on Ruben Owens' his shoulders. I mean, again, I just kind of was like, when you watch that bowl game, there's like a couple of those runs where when he puts his foot in the ground and takes off, he just has a different gear than those other 2 guys. And I think you saw some moments early in the season, like you kind of mentioned, where he wasn't really taking what he could get. It was like a lot of like some of that bouncing out, and a lot of running backs do that.
A lot of well, as Michigan fans, like Blake Corum went through the same growing pains. I mean, Blake Corum kind of, you get away with that stuff in high school, then you get to the college level, and okay, you can't just run around every single defender. Sometimes you just got to get downhill. And I think Ruben Owens went through those growing pains. I think he came out the other side, has a better feel for playing that running back position at the college football level. But
when he attacks the line of scrimmage hard and runs like the way he can and what he's capable of, again, I think he's better contact balance. I think he's more explosive. Just kind of a better version of than the other 2.
Yeah, it's not even a knock on Amari Daniels and Le'Veon Moss. I think Ruben Owens is different. Like he just moves a little bit different, has a little bit of a different gear. One other thing I'd add, and Ruben Owens coming out of high school caught the ball a little bit. So I was excited about that. In that Kansas State offense, looking at some numbers, I mean, Texas A&M targeted their running backs less than 40 times. You look at Kansas State, 65-plus targets to their running backs. They did a phenomenal job using their running backs out of the backfield, running them up on wheel routes, getting them out on bubbles. And you look at Ruben Owens in his skill set to operate in space, like a linebacker's not going to be able to run with Ruben Owens in a route. And you look at a safety, I think Ruben Owens just making people miss in space. So I'm really excited to see what the running backs can do as pass catchers in this offense as well. Because, again, Colin Klein, he wants to get his play. It doesn't matter if you play wide receiver, tight end, running back. You are getting the football in space, and you're going to be given the opportunity to make some big plays. So I guess we'll end it here, Dill. Running back, who's the leading rusher in this Texas A&M offense?
I mean, I think if this team's going to be really good on offense and explosive, I think it has to be Ruben Owens.
Yeah,
I think he's got to get at least probably 50 to 55% of the balls and however carries, and however you shake out the rest of it, it shakes out. But again, I just think he is a difference maker at that position. I do like the other 2. I think they still should get their touches. But when you got like a real horse like that, I think you got to
ride it.
Got to get the ball. I think he's got to take the lion's share of the carries, and I think he He should be the leading rusher in my mind.
I 100% agree. Ruben Owens is my guy. And one other thing then we'll close it out. Promise. We're going 15 plus minutes here. Got a lot of notes here. Is Conor Weigman using his legs? And I'm not necessarily banging the table for him to be, because he's not necessarily the size. He's a big dog, but I mean, Will Howard was 252 pounds. So it's like Will Howard could take those hits, but I do think Coach Colin Klein is going to try to use those quarterbacks as weapons too. And whether it's one of the younger quarterbacks that's on this roster kind of coming in a package, whether it's Conor Weigman, I think you are going to see some designed runs for those quarterbacks. Another wrinkle in this Texas A&M offense that, again, I mean, Jimbo Fisher and how he wanted to run that offense, and you even saw kind of glimpses of it with Bobby Petrino calling the plays last year. It was stale. It didn't really utilize those playmakers. It was Jimbo Fisher's offense. We're going to run it regardless of our personnel. I think what you're most excited for is Colin Klein's going to get in, look at the personnel, look at the skill set, say, how can we help these guys get put in positions where they can be successful? Whereas Jimbo Fisher just, hey, we're going to use the offense that I ran at Florida State because that 1 year really worked, and it just was stale. And so I'm really excited about this offense. Again, I think the key for this offense is that offensive line. If you see better play from this offensive line, I really am high on what this Texas A&M offense can be, and it all goes through my guy, Conor Weigman. I might even put a future bet for Heisman Trophy here, Dill. After watching that Miami game, the boys are fired up. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.